Welcome back, everybody, to Ravenstar's Witching Hour. I'm your host, Solaris BlueRaven, and I'm here with my very special guest, John Stormm. John, you with me?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
So let's continue on with this intense conversation we were having here.
Now, back to the story. We head for the hacienda that we were supposed to deal with out near Monterey.
Mm-hmm.
And we hanging back. We're up in the rocks, just kind of watching the place. I don't know if I'm going to really hit it or not, because I'm already suspicious and very leery about it. And we're up in the rocks watching things, you see a little topiary in there. And out of the prairie, out of the desert, comes walking this tall, blonde-haired fellow. Now I'm a distance away. I can't see him real good, but I can see him good enough to know he's got shaggy blonde hair. He's dressed all in black, and he's walking like he's taking a freaking stroll in the park. And he's walking up towards the hacienda. And like I say, there's kind of a garden out back with topiaries and stuff. And all of a sudden, the topiaries just start busting out with all kinds of gunfire. I mean, loads of gunfire. They shot this guy off the hamburger. And, when he was down, they kept walking up, kept reloading, and kept shooting and shooting and shooting this guy. Mm. Now, I had a reputation. I mean, there was people that said, and even my friend Laura used to say that I was immortal, that I couldn't be killed. Because I kind of suffered a few gunshots and knife wounds and stuff along the way that probably looked worse than they were, was my opinion. But there was people that actually believed I couldn't die. And I had like 100% record, except with the exception of the last 3 missions of doing my missions. And they were always tough missions. That's why they made us very survivable and went through all this effort and expense to do this to us. Mm-hmm. So these guys walking up on this guy, and they're shooting and shooting and shooting and shooting until he's just a bloody, greasy smear in the sand. And me and my partner just kind of turn around and say, we're aborting this mission. We sneak back across the border of America. I'm right. I bought this bus ticket where you can ride for like 2 weeks anywhere in continental United States. You just show the ticket and just keep going anywhere you want. And I'm zigzagging all over the United States. I don't know what the heck I'm going to do. I'm kind of panicky, paranoid, and it's like I'm not doing this anymore. It's not good guys versus bad guys anymore. It's bad guys versus worse guys, and I'm working for the worst guys. Mm-hmm. So it's like I'm quitting. This is done. And interestingly enough, by the time I made my way back to Rochester, my kid brother was about 10 years younger than me. Somebody sent him an obituary that says, basically, they buried me in a cemetery just outside of Mexico City. They got my name on there. It's like, I didn't have any ID on me at all. I never crossed a checkpoint. No Mexican laid eyes on me or heard my name spoken or anything the entire time. And they buried this greasy smear that they made of this blonde guy, my doppelganger, or perhaps my clone. All right. So I mean, when people say that there's clones done, the circumstantial evidence is in favor that they're right. Mm-hmm. As far as I'm concerned, because this has shown up. Right. And that time, and like I said, my brother used to have the obituary thing, had my name and everything, and I just couldn't believe it.
Wow.
And when I went to go to work, I had to get a Social Security card, and Social Security had me marked down as deceased.
Really? Holy cow.
And the only people that knew we were going there was, back in the 70s, you took these jobs through like ads in Soldier of Fortune. Mm-hmm. And you were part of certain mercenary groups. I was part of a unit they called Disney Tunes. And my
harmless.
My call sign was Thumper. And our leader was Mickey Mouse.
Oh, jeez.
Actually, we used to call him Iron Mike. He hated Mickey Mouse. But, Goofy was our heavy weapons and demolitions guy. Doc was a doc and a darn good sniper. field medicine. We were cross-trained in a lot of things. I could also do a good amount of field medicine. I can clean up and stitch up a wound really good. I mean, really good job. Mm-hmm. You won't get no infections if I do it. But I mean, that's kind of what we were doing. That was my very last mission. After that, I was the spooks came down and threatened me, and I just left a couple bodies there. I mean, they physically threatened me with guns, and it's kind of like, okay, like I say, violence is my trigger. You show deadly force, I'm going to kill you. Mm-hmm. You never do anything like that. There's no chance of that happening at all. Even if I don't like you or disagree with you, as far as I'm concerned, your life is precious. Mm-hmm.
Are you still considered a government asset?
Yeah, they do. I can't leave the country. I can't. I'm on a no-fly list. I can't even cross the border into Canada. I tried that a couple of years ago to go visit my daughter and my grandsons for a couple of weeks. And got all the way up to Messina, got off the bus, looked across the border, and nope, they just kind of left me there. And some Mohawk friends come up and got me, and we managed to sneak across, to visit my grandsons. And they were really puzzled when we crossed the border coming back. What the hell do you do in Canada? I knew my passport was flagged, so I didn't show it. And they said, don't you have any other ID, like a passport? I said, nope, just this driver's license.
Oh,
and,
wow.
Of course, they had to let me back in America, and, they were very upset. And it's like, too bad. I wanted to visit my family, and I'm not a criminal. But like I say, anything that involves any kind of government agency or bureaucracy whatsoever, as a MK Ultra, when they say asset, they mean property. Mm-hmm. You're government property. You're not a person. You don't have rights. I never had rights. They tortured. They experimented on me. They did all of these things. Some things I kind of went along with at one point because I thought I was doing a good thing, and I still think I was in some aspects. But they were horrible people. People talk about, the 6 million Jews of the Holocaust that were killed in Nazi Germany and Poland and Europe during World War II. It's just awful. And it's kind of like, look, Project Paperclip took those same evil monsters, brought them here, and had them do those things that they did on those poor Jews. Not that I don't empathize with them, but they brought them here and did it to American children.
Yes, they
did. While they were still busy in Nuremberg trials, hanging Nazi war criminals like they were Christmas tree ornaments. And they had those people here doing that to American children without knowledge, without consent. Mm-hmm. You see kids on pictures of milk cartons. I see MK Ultra experiments.
You bet. I agree with you on that one for sure. Yeah, it's horrific when you think about it. And another thing that always annoys me is the whole UFO disclosure thing. Everybody's wanting to go to D.C. and gripe about, UFO disclosure. What about all this covert assault technology they've been using and misusing on people? Nobody wants to go and petition that, right?
No. And I don't think it would do. Duncan for a long while was pushing petitions for it. I love the guy like you wouldn't believe, like he was my own brother. I mean, really. Mm-hmm. Talk about a soul brother. I don't think only another ultra would understand what we know and what our lives have been like. He had a thing going for petition, but I got a lot less faith that there's anything that's not corrupt or where they can threaten people. I mean, they threaten me often. They threaten him often too. It's kind of like, it kind of ranks right up there with, it's Saturday night. What else is new? Whether they're going to be able to do it or not, well, they know better than to get too close. I'm really good. When I was a bad boy and I wouldn't go out on some missions, they said, well, we got a lot of money invested in you. and you got to make this happen somehow. So you're going to take your skills and you're going to train others. And that's how I got trained at Duncan. I had gotten into a really, really big fight in Colorado Springs, and one of the guys died from he punched him in the heart. Well, he already had a condition, but he did attack me first. Mm-hmm. And there were witnesses, but Uncle Sam always turns things around. You know, you're never the hero. You were in the wrong place at the wrong time, and you should have did it differently. Mm-hmm. You know, so they'll always make you out to be the bad guy if that's what they want. It right. doesn't matter if you were the frickin' Lone Ranger. So I was very nearly up for manslaughter, and that just kind of disappeared, and it really should have, because, like I said, it was completely accidental, and he did instigate it. He did try to sneak up from behind and brain me with something, and mm-hmm. I caught his reflection in the glass in the bar in front of where we were having this fight, and I wheeled around and popped him in the heart, and anything I hit, I break. Mm-hmm. I have a punch of 1,600 pounds per square inch. I can hit 4 times in a second. That's my average. It's not my fastest. Mm-hmm. So, especially in anger and hyped up, the adrenaline starts up. Those right. super hard muscles and bones and stuff, so anything I hit, I break. And I've even punched through bullet-resistant glass before. Mm-hmm.
Well, then there's the death touch, too. That almost sounds like,
the dim mak, well, that's a little bit different. That's a little bit... I gave sorcery a bad name. Sorcery is nothing but pharmacology, okay? It's ancient pharmacology. It's an ancient doctor of medicine, doctors who basically prescribe medicine. Now, an osteopathic doctor is going to use more manipulation, things like acupuncture, acupressure. Now, you can take medicine and take your knowledge of medicine and give you, say, like a little digitalis and give you a heart attack, mm-hmm. right, to kill you. There's the good side. I can use it to heal you, the medicine, or I can use it to poison you or to slowly kill you or to make you dependent so that you got to keep buying it to live. Mm-hmm. And this is what gave sorcery a bad name. Now, in Oriental medicine, you have acupressure and acupuncture, which uses certain marks and points and stuff on different meridians of the body mm-hmm. to create a balance, to gain your health back. Now, dim mak, real, honest dim mak, it's called poison hand. Instead of that hand being used to heal, it's being used to hit those same meridians, but in a way to create more imbalance, so that over time, either instantly or over time, you die. Mm-hmm. And I am trained in that. George H.W. Bush, when he was the head of the CIA back in the mid-'70s, he liked the dark art of the happy accident. This is where we'd go down to a mission, and I'd show up in a hotel where some drug lord or warlord was staying, find some way, quickly break his neck, fracture his skull, or use some dim mak or something on him. And, most commonly it was fracture a skull, break a neck, toss him down a flight of stairs. It was an accident. He died of natural causes. They're not looking for an assassin. They're not calling for a murder investigation. Nobody's pointing fingers. Sirens aren't wailing, and people looking out for murderers or homicide, homicidal people or anything at all. It's just an accident. Uncle Sam's, the magic words are plausible deniability. They weren't involved. That's their thing. And the skills that I had and that I taught Duncan and I taught others was this gave you the plausible deniability. Now, sometimes we go in guns blazing and stuff like that, but it would be an issue of, they'd say, what we used to call the cleaning ladies. That was the CIA. They'd bribe people, your witnesses. Yeah, that was a rival gang you saw. And this was a territorial dispute among these factions. And that's what it would come off as, and nobody would be pointing their fingers at the good old U.S. of A. Mm-hmm. Even when it was funny, George Bush was vice president under Reagan, and they signed a promise to everybody that they never have and never would use assassins.
Yeah, right.
But here I was. That's exactly what
Pinocchio.
I thought. Yeah, a good number of us were. I wasn't the only one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, the whole thing is so corrupted. I mean, where is there any real, is anybody clean, really, in the U.S. government?
Yeah. Well, if they are clean, they're pacified by being threatened, or either they would withhold funds, or they tell you, we can bury you out somewhere in the desert and they'll never find you. They've used that before. They used that in Roswell. It's like, that wouldn't work on me. So some officer, in fact, that's been tried. You threatening me, son, I can guarantee you're dead. That quick. Within a heartbeat. If I'm close enough to touch you, your next heartbeat is completely under my control. And it doesn't have to be anything mystical or anything. It can be very practical and very scientific. And that's how I was trained. And that's how I trained others. But there was some very strange elements. There was some things that happened. Like I say, they sometimes try to give you innocuous memories, and the other memories have come back. The screen memories or stuff like that would fall apart because the PTSD would bring the real ones back, and sooner or later, you'd remember, hey, I thought I was looking at an owl outside the window and hooting, and there was a little gray guy standing there staring at me.
And that's another thing I was going to ask you, John. So how long do the screen memories last?
It depends. It depends on what they're covering up.
Right.
The ones with the little gray guys, at least the two that I remember at 6, it's like I saw what I saw. I mean, it didn't work when I saw it. I think I see Jeannie Robinson sitting there with a plastic bag over her, whimpering and fearful. And it's like she's not. If I look over the side of the wall, there she is chasing, Dick Benedict around the playground. There can't be 2 Jeannie Robinsons there. And I see it for what it is. It's a little gray thing with big black eyes, with no lights in them, a little slit of a mouth, a little teeny tiny nose. And it wasn't much taller than I was at 6, about the same size. But it was sitting down on the, with its back up against the incinerator and its knees drawn up in a plastic bag, trying to cover itself up with this plastic leaf bag. And then there was the 3 in the garage. At first, it appeared to be the things from the movie I just watched. But, my stepfather's telling me I'm crazy and I'm impressionable. And eventually it's like I find the nerve to, when I'm afraid of something, especially as an ultra, I think that was part of the ultra conditioning that kicked in. It's, I got to go see this. I got to go face this. I was afraid of heights, so I got into rock climbing. I was afraid of spiders, so I started raiding, arachnophobia. So I started raising black widows for a lab. They used to use the threads to make crosshairs for, rifle scopes, and they used the venom and neurotoxin. The spooks use that stuff. But I could get $50 for a couple of good black widows. But that's a side story. And I faced the fear, so I went out in the garage, and of course, there's not the 2 tall aliens with the little one in the glass that I saw in the movie. There's 3 little gray guys about my own size standing there, just looking at me, and me looking back and going, "Oh, it's you." And it's like, to this day, I don't know what the hell that meant.
So they were telepathic?
I think it's something like that. Yeah. I have a lot of feelings about things stirring in me that I can't quite put a handle like language on.
Right.
Just general impressions. I've seen other things too before, but like I say, I have seen graves, and it's like, well, is it all in my mind or is it all in this? Well, I had physical evidence that I did draw the damn things when I was 6 years old with my mom because she had the pictures in her little boneyard suitcase.
Right. And did you ever see any craft, any UFO craft?
A couple times, but I don't remember what happened exactly after that. I remember being out camping with my cousin Richard, one of those summers out in the country with at my uncle's place, and we were out in the tent, way out in the pasture, out away from the house a ways, and we're camping. We're let's see, how old was I? Oh, I think it was about 11 or 12. And we were camping, and I remember seeing this thing that looked like two cereal bowls put together, and there was three bands of light. One across the very top, kind of a little flat across the top, and a little flat across the bottom. And there was a band of light that went around the middle of the scene where it would look like the two bowls joined. Mm-hmm. And this thing was lowering. It was probably not more than 30, 40 feet above us, not directly over us, but a little off to the side of our tent. I could have threw a rock and hit it. Mm-hmm. It crossed my mind, but I just kind of stared at it. I think I turned about as dumb as my cousin Richard, just kind of standing there with your mouth open, drooling. I remember a light coming out of the bottom, but I don't remember. Next thing I remember, we were waking up in the morning and kind of slept wrong and had a kink in my neck, and that was about it.
Wow. What year was this?
Oh, let's see, I was about 12 years old, so I've been 65.
Thank goodness. So you have had quite a few encounters.
Oh,
Something's going on.
Those ain't necessarily the strangest.
Jeez. Yeah.
But that it doesn't all involve like spacemen. I've dealt with fairies, nature spirits. Mm-hmm. I've seen angels. I've seen demons. I got to tell you, angels scare me worse than demons.
Really?
Well, I've learned how to handle demons, or at least most demons. And as I got older and better as a witch, and more experience in that, it's like, yeah, I could deal with demons. Angels are a whole nother story. They can kind of look at you like you just freeze up or you want to drop down dead. Mm-hmm. There's compassion in it, but some of them, when they're out to do something, it's like you're standing there, and if you were in the way, they just walk through inside you like wheat. Mm-hmm. And there would be nothing you could do about it. You feel absolutely helpless. So they like I said, they kind of give me the willies a bit more than demons. Not that they bothered me. I've had encounters, and I probably wouldn't even be alive if it wasn't for them in some ways. I always attributed the doppelgangers to them. I was never sure. When people were talking about clones involved with MK Ultra, it's kind of like, well, I was associating with doppelgangers, kind of like guardian angels or something like that, doing something. But when you think of angels or you think of demons, in most cases, think something not of this earth. So that means E.T. Mm-hmm. Same thing. Right. All right? Not of this world. Either, no matter how you cut it, where they're from or what that. I hear the graves are from Zeta Reticuli. I don't know that, and I don't necessarily feel that so. I used to say Chrome was from Saturn, but I just kind of picked that out. That was part of my little childhood comic book that I do, with my sisters and stuff. To entertain ourselves on those rainy Sunday afternoons, and draw pictures and make up stories. We were space kids, and we'd go off in our own craft and have all these adventures, and that was just let's pretend.
Yeah, exactly. That's pretty wild. Have you ever had any regression done?
I did once in was 74 or 75. But it was at this party, and it was very new agey, and some of it tends to. I'm not a new age witch. I'm an old craft witch, and some of this new agey stuff is just a little light in the lopers and ungrounded for me. It just, it just kind of sets me off a little bit. You get a bunch of people together, and they're all talking about reincarnation, and this one was Cleopatra, and that one was Merlin in a past life, or, the plan. And it's kind of like, and you meet other people, and they were the same people in a past life.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, look, you guys all couldn't have been. And you get a regression, and in the regression, I was Merlin. But I probably heard about 15 other people that were Merlin, too. All right? But I didn't identify myself directly as Merlin. I identified myself as the Summer Hawk. And I was at this castle, and the king was away. The king was, we called him the Bear. And the Bear was away. He was off somewhere with his troops, with his knights. And these Saxons were laying siege to this castle. And basically all I had to defend it with was a bunch of young kids and old geezers that hardly had any teeth left in their head. And we had to defend the walls. And the walls were going to hold for a while, but not forever. They're going to burn down the gate. And I remember going up into this tower, and there was this pool that just lit up. It was like gasoline, but it didn't have a smell to it like that. It was more like brimstone. And I called out these things from a gate. They looked like demons and gargoyles and stuff like that. And then I was like one of them, a gargoyle or something on the walls of this castle. And we jumped down onto these Saxons, and we just start ripping their arms off and just tear them to pieces. And then we chased them off into the woods. I mean, we went on a wild hunt. So it's kind of a faith thing, and that was what I saw in the regression. Very vividly. In fact, I had painted a series of pictures in acrylics back then that got bought up pretty quick.
That's pretty intense.
Yeah, it was. But like I said, you were Merlin and the Bear was King Arthur, and it's kind of like, okay, like I say, I've probably, over the years, I've probably heard about 15 other people that were Merlin, and about a good half dozen at least that were King Arthur, and
yeah. You know what I think that's going on?
I probably know 20 women that were Cleopatra or Helen of Troy.
Right, it's all glamorized. You know what's funny? I think they're accessing the Dreampool Collective on that particular timeline. I don't think they understand that they're supposed to be the witness instead of being a character or in the role. That's what I'm thinking, anyways, when I hear about that, because it does sound like a lot of people do have the same lifetime or the illusion of.
There was an interesting corroboration that troubled me, and I still, when I don't understand things, I do what I call putting it on the back burner. I got a lot of stuff on my back burner. And these are things, it's kind of like I make a mental note of it. I put it on, when I get more information, I compare it and I try to understand it better. Now, as I was growing up, these warlocks, these masons, this stuff, Luciferians and stuff that were involved with MK Ultra, and I'd get paraded around to these guys as one of their successes and all of this stuff. They were waiting for somebody that they had other names for it now, okay? But I believe what they were talking about, they were waiting for Merlin to come back and bring them King Arthur, find King Arthur for them. And they were treating me and some of the covens that I went to as if I was going to be this Merlin guy. But some of the Christians were saying that was something else. No, you're the false prophet that's going to bring them the Antichrist that brings this new world order all the way, back, this Luciferian deal and that. And this used to scare the crap out of me. This used to just bother me a little bit at first. there was the Merlin. Oh yeah, that sounds sweet. That sounds nice. And then there's the Christian aspect, the false prophet, identifying or presenting Merlin presented Arthur to England or Logos as he called it. That was his new kingdom, this new age that he was trying to bring in. And he did bring it in. Arthur was just the beginning of it, and things did change after that. But a lot of people were treating me like that, and I tried my best to get away from that. I didn't want no part of that. I don't want to be the mage that brings this kind of crap about. I'm hoping for something else. I'm hoping for people to reach a tipping point and wake up from this awful spell the whole world's under. And it is a spell. I do recognize it for what it is. I can point out its aspects. I know how it works. And this thing is really tightly woven over centuries of time it's been built.
Yeah.
So I kind of see another aspect, but they all do kind of tie in a bit. And, when you talk about this tool, well, there's certain archetypes. Well, Merlin only had, he didn't have an earthly father. He had a mother. His father was an incubus. My father, there was a lot of strange things about my dad. Some far too crazy to believe. But I never known him, never met him. No, he's never met me. We were kept apart. I don't have an earthly father. I just got a mother. And even she didn't want me. You talk about a kid that had a face that only a mother could love. Well, I wasn't that well off. At least that's how I looked at it. So most gals thought I was handsome for some reason. I never quite got that. I just figured, Grandma would tell me it was my charm, and that was a part of my heritage. It's not just a charming guy. That's something to do with what we are, why I'm such a great witch.
Yeah, and also, you are a multidimensional being, and I really think that when you start inheriting your legacy on that cellular level, that life becomes very interesting. You've gone down some different paths. You've gone down the path of the witch. You've gone down the path of MK Ultra. I can certainly understand a lot of where you've been, different generation and a different technology, but I do understand mass mind control and psychotronic warfare without a doubt. And I do think that we need to break that quote-unquote spell, because I think a lot of that spell work, is being deployed through that.
Go ahead. The voices sometimes, not like physically, and I do get the impulses to want to attack. This is when there's not violence, but in my soul, I am who I am.
Right.
And, I have the impulse that I want to pop this person right now. And if I hit them in the face, especially the way I hit them, my fist is going to go through the front of their face or into the side of their head. I had this cowboy that didn't like me when I was living in Colorado Springs. His name was Steve Grimmer or something like that. And he used to just throw me all kinds of crap about being a New York Yankee or something like that. And he just figured out, because I come from New York, he's picturing New York City and automatically thinks I'm some kind of gangster from the street of New York City, and it's really not the case. And a bit of a tough guy. And it's like, I'm not the guy. I don't back down. I don't have a back down. There's no reverse in this car. There's only forward. There's a lot of you. I'll go through you. And he was on it. The one night I got into trouble, he was on his bike. He yelled something at me and flipped me off, and I ran between the houses and cut him off when he went around the corner. And he was on a dirt bike, and I jumped him while he was passing by his house on a dirt bike. I come whipping out, jumped up, knocked him right off his bike, and punched him in the side of his helmet. And I punched through his helmet in partly into his ear. But we had this long-going hostility. He didn't die from it. He got a couple scars from it, but they were sexy scars. He's that kind of guy.
And you could write a book on that alone. Some of your adventures.
That's the kind of, it was. Well, a lot of them is stuff that I probably could get in a lot of trouble for it. At least what happened in the United States. The stuff overseas, it's just a matter of who figures out that was me.
Mm-hmm. Well, and also you have to obviously you understand, and listeners are understanding that this is MK Ultra too. We're talking about something that was programmed into you. Is that right? I mean, is that your natural disposition to do what you've done in the past? I don't believe so. That's because of the MK Ultra program, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So it's a byproduct, or you're a byproduct of the technology.
There's a lot of byproducts that I kind of got to live with. I own the Ultra thing. I took ownership of it, and I didn't become a really nice guy I just had this wonderful grandma. She's dead now, but nobody's dead, and she taught me a lot about what kind of person I was supposed to be, and she was the one person I knew that I always knew. There was no doubt. There was never a doubt that she loved me. I've been married 3 times. I've had lots of girlfriends, and this, that, or the other thing would happen. And, we'd make the holiest vows you could make before God and man, and they break them, and I never break a vow. My will and word are unbroken. And I can't understand that in other people. I can't relate to it. I can't, and I won't. Because I want to be. I was always Grandma's boy, and to this day, I really wouldn't want to disappoint her. I try to be the man that I'm supposed to be, and it feels right to me, and it feels good, and it's warm, and it's nice, and it's more human than I ever felt, and I'm getting better at it every year. But in my early days, I was very dangerous, and it was probably a good thing. Not that I was ever going to beat those girls, because I protected the women in my clan, in my household. My sisters, my mom, my daughters, my wife, my grandma, my aunts, whoever was around, I went with them and I protected them. And that, I'm the big brother. That's how I feel. That's how I feel right, and I'm in my place. As an ultra, when I felt like I was doing something for my country, or we're talking about very evil, murdering men that murder a lot of people, and some of these people were awful. They were hideous. I knew this one guy, Joe Baca. He was a bandito up in the mountains near Chihuahua. He was not somebody I went after. He was somebody I stumbled on, being the outrider for my group. Just trying to make sure we didn't run into any bad guys or anybody find out we were there and that we were crossing this territory. And I kind of stumbled into him. This guy's got cut hands off of people, made hands of glory. He had permeated them with wax and made them into big candles. He had stoves and things that he uses as eating bowls or drinking vessels out of people's skulls. And he was a santera, a brujo, but he was also the head of this group of bandits up in these mountains, and they jumped to waylay people, and they sold drugs and smuggled drugs and everything else, and people across the border, and some of those people never made it across the border. I had a bad encounter with him, but a lot of people were quite evil, and I didn't mind. I felt that you can't just ask them to stop, and they'll stop. You can't get the police to arrest them because they own the police. So if you kill them, the only way to stop them and to make other people, good people's lives better, is to take these people's lives away. And so I didn't feel awful bad about that. I felt a little bit like a monster because I could do that, and I did do that. But it was the right thing to do. But now, like I say, as I am now, and especially as sick as I've been, I'd like to go through the rest of my life without ever even hurting anybody. And this, to me, would be a very, what I do and what I say that exposes the corruption and the evil in the world, that's a good thing. I want people to wake up. But I don't want to have to fight or kill anymore. if I can avoid it.
Right. It's unfortunate. It really is, John, that there's so much evil in the world. And what I can't understand is a lot of these people who are inducted into covert programs were good people to start. They were gifted in some way, whether it's psychic or whatever. They get pulled into these bad programs. I mean, why don't they go after the people who are evil to begin with?
Into monsters. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, why don't they just take the evil ones and program the hell out of them? Why are they inducting good people and good children? I don't understand that.
I didn't either. That was a question, well, I understand it when I look at those Satanists and the Luciferians who do the Black Mass. Mm-hmm. They take this church thing. You got to know I'm not a religious man. I'm a spiritual man, but I'm not a religious man. I don't really see a real value in religion. I see it as another way of another mind control, saying all witches are clerics. So that means all clerics are witches or warlocks, because they're misrepresenting God, and they're doing this for their own, not all of them. There's some decent preachers and stuff out there, I'm sure. But they do this Black Mass, and essentially they take the hosts and stuff that they use is supposed to be holy and stuff from the altar, and they desecrate it. Mm-hmm. They offend God, the Creator, or this is what they say. I don't believe that when they talk about God, they're talking about the same God that I'm talking about when I talk about the Creator. Because he's not a cranky old white man sitting on a throne. He's the intelligence, the awareness, the consciousness that defines how many electrons are around each atom and holds them in place. Yep. That knows everything. When he says he knows when the sparrow falls, he really knows when the sparrow falls, or when a fly falls, or when anything does. This is the only kind of thing that could be that capital G God, not some petty tyrant sitting on a throne in the clouds ready to clobber people for masturbating or something, or saying a bad word or some crap. But anyway, when they take innocent souls and twist them and desecrate them against our Maker's design and wishes, this is the ultimate Luciferian, ultimate satanic insult or offense to God. Mm-hmm. And they sexually abused a lot of us. I had been sexually abused, but I got violent. It's like you can do it, but it's at your own risk. You're going to suffer, and I'm going to make you suffer worse than I. Mm-hmm. I was the kind of guy, you come up and shake my hand, I give you a warm hug. You come up and punch me in the mouth, I break your arm so that you don't punch anybody for a very long time. That's the kind of soul I am. If I had a middle name, it would be Vindictive. You know? It can work out to a good degree, or it could work out to a very bad degree.
Right. Well, it's cause and effect, too. You know, people get what they give, right?
Yeah. Well, the potential is kind of amped up a bit for a number
and
of
almost
reasons.
triggered. Do you think that was kind of like a trigger, too?
I think it's been used as a trigger. Like I say, violence, for some people, a lot of times they use all kinds of triggers. Sometimes it'd be a little tone, a special tone on the telephone. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it would be a catchphrase, but something that you'd never hear anybody say. Somebody, certain kind of flower-printed dress would come by and say, "Please, dear, don't let the rhinoceros get on the couch." You know how he says. This is something you'll never hear. Mm-hmm. And that will be your trigger to take this post-hypnotic suggestion and go out and follow through with it. Now, they've used this very successfully on what I call the throwaways, or the disposable ultras. Now, these ultras haven't been hardened, or their muscles done, or their brain scarred, or anything like that. All they did was hypnotize the crap out of them. They use drugs, they use electroshock, they use whatever kind of crazy technology they got. Mm-hmm. And They got some really interesting stuff. I wouldn't have believed all the crap that I've seen in my head in that MRI. I wouldn't have believed it was all there if I hadn't seen it myself. I might have suspected one or two small things. The one in my hand I could see without X-rays or anything. The one in my left hand, but nothing like that. I just couldn't imagine it. But they just take these other guys. They teach them how to shoot really well, how to snipe, how to scope, and then they hypnotize them, give them these post-hypnotic suggestions, and they be test for a few milk toast. They have their workaday job, telephone rings, ding. Now they got a target. Now you'll see this a lot. This is what's happening.
Right. Yep.
Now this is conspiracy, but it's not conspiracy theory. It's conspiracy fact. I know this because I've seen this training before, and I see it like a fingerprint every time it comes up. The first time I remember it happened was at Texas A&M in about the early 60s. Whitman or something like that was his name. His brain was just recently stolen out of a laboratory, which was interesting because I wonder what kind of hardware he might have had in his skull. But this was the first time we've seen this kind of crime happening. I mean, we had people like Dillinger and these other guys that were downright batshit crazy and murderous, but nobody ever just got up one morning and just decided to kill a bunch of innocent people for funsies. But this is not what's happening. Remember those two magic words the government always wants: plausible deniability. All right, the guy gets up in the tower, and I guarantee you the first one or two of the people that get shot are the actual marks, the targets that the assassin is after. Because once he starts shooting, all hell breaks loose. Right. And all he has to do is shoot several people after that. And instead of an assassination or a hit, it is now random violence. They're not looking for, when you got an assassin, who paid the assassin? Who hired the assassin? This is when fingers get pointed back at the government and they don't like it. But if he kills a whole bunch of people, well, now that's random violence. He was a psych patient at this clinic. Now, I got to tell you about a psych clinic here, well, I'm not in Rochester now, but when I was in Rochester, which is where I was processed at. Now, I guarantee you the first couple people of those at Aurora, that fella that got that lady Guilford and that judge and then a bunch of other people, the judge was the target. And in fact, me and Duncan had discussed this a couple times, actually. The judge was his target. His job, he was told, he was triggered to hit that judge and then shoot some other people, and that was random violence. The judge was in some process of something, indictments against some people in the government. And that got ended right then and there. But nobody looked at it as assassination or a hit because it's random violence, because this crazy guy that was being treated in a psych unit got a gun and just decided to shoot a lot of people that day. Right. Aurora, James Holmes, same deal. His father was involved in the LIBOR scandal. His father was a witness against for the prosecution in the LIBOR scandal to testify. James was in the MK Ultra program in neurosciences from a child. They were grooming him. The kid was a genius in neuroscience. Got great scores and stuff. And then they find him, he's all drugged up, as happy as a clam, sitting in his car. Everybody says there was two people in full riot gear. Way on the other end of the movie theater parking lot is a second gas mask. And it's like, well, there was only one shooter. Witnesses say there was two, but when they get to court, they say there's only one. Sandy Hook was just a farce, whatever the hell it was. But there have been several others of these. The first couple people, if you look at the first people shot and investigate them, you're going to see they got something against the government or something. You're going to find a motive for killing them.
I agree. You're
why
right.
They should be dead. All right. Now, when I was in MK Ultra in Rochester, Building 400, it's right across the street. It's still there. It's still operating. We had a hearing in 77 and another one in 95. That place never shut down for 5 minutes. Okay? Now, there's a fella killed somebody in 2012, a man named William H. Spangler up in Webster, New York. Killed, start shooting 4 firemen and a couple cops, set fire to his house, and, but he was being treated. Now, when they had failures, and they go scarring some of these babies' brains and injecting some of these people with the drugs, they didn't often survive it, or if they survived it, they were unfit for living in society. They had to be institutionalized. I got some pictures in my Facebook page of the Terrence Tower. That's where they put the throwaways, the people that didn't make it so good through the experimentation, the human experimentation. The stuff they did on me as first generation, they had more failures than successes. And they treated me like I was in gold. But they got better at it. By the time they got to Duncan's generation, they start training those guys in live fire and having them actually kill each other because they had more of them. They only had a few of us that succeeded. But most of the throwaways ended up in the institution. Now, this guy Spengler was keyed off Christmas Eve, 2012. He was also being treated down there at Stroud Psych. And I guarantee you a couple of those people were the target. The first couple of people he shot, he knew they were coming. That's who he was waiting for. He intended to snipe and kill these people. And it wasn't just some crazy random thing. It was planned out. He was keyed for it. He was triggered for it. And where does he go after that? He's back in the institution. The same institution that made him into that monster. See, that could have been me. Or any of them could have been me. They used to threaten me when I was a kid. If you don't toe the line there, you're going to institutionalize you. You're going to go there. And I've been there. I saw those people crying and howling and smearing themselves in their own feces. There are fates worse than death, and they're in that building. And that's how they end up. And for James Holmes, behind those closed doors, you haven't seen him in court where he wasn't whacked out of his mind. And he wasn't a druggie. You're talking about a straight A, full-boat scholarship neuroscience geek.
Right. Yep. Absolutely.
And when he gets behind those closed doors and forget about what you think about rights and humane treatment or any of that other kind of stuff. It's screaming time.
Yep, you're so right, John. And unfortunately, they're deploying psychotronic hardware where people are hearing dialogue and this and that, of course, and all the other things that go along with it. And all of this stuff is just bad misuse of technology.
That's been actually the testimony of that fella, the Washington D.C. or was it D.C.? It was he was at a naval base.
Right. Yeah.
He's been complaining for months about the work. I've heard those. I can resist it. I've been resisting it all my life. In one way, shape, or form. They'd say go this way. They used to put this Orion white supremacy crap on me from the tours of the community in Rochester. And it's like after the riots in '64, when there were civil rights marches, it's kind of like, look, my ancestors got off the boat. The only way that we could be full-blown Americans was to go fight in Lincoln's War and free those slaves. Now, when we got those slaves free, you get back and you'll see signs, no colored or Irish allowed. And but that's how we got into that country. So nobody was really free. But I could relate to those dark-skinned people better than I could to a lot of the white people that were ushering me around, parading me all over the place. So they says, well, don't hang around with those black people. They're not like we are. They're not as good as you are. You are perfect. You are a perfect specimen. You are homo superior, I think was the words they used or something like that. And I didn't like being called a homo anyway, but I wasn't homophobic.
Right. And John,
but coming from these guys, it was a little weird.
Right.
So it's like I made sure I paraded every time the civil rights marched. I lost a scholarship, a full boat scholarship, that they were going to give me. They just kind of pulled that out from my. But that's the kind of thing that they do to apply pressure. And it's the same kind of thing they do to these hospitals and these clinics and some of these doctors. Some of them aren't evil. They're just weak.
Right, exactly. And John, we're out of time here just about. I want to thank you so much for being on the show tonight. It's been awesome to have you. And I really appreciate it. I'm glad you're getting better. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight as well. I hope you appreciated John being on the show. And stay tuned for Shiny Side Out with David Dungeon Becky coming up next, of course. To sell you on into the night from Down Under, I'll be joining them. We'll be talking about artificial intelligence, covert technology, mind control, and all that stuff associated. And, okay, John, we probably have maybe a minute plus or minus. Anything you'd like to say?
No, I'm pretty much talked out.
Yeah, they got an earful tonight. I really appreciate you being on. We've learned some new things, and yeah, we'll have to discuss more about the extraterrestrial connection. I think there's something there, perhaps that needs to be.
I'm sure there is. I don't know what it all is, so it's kind of like I'm exploring as much as the rest of you. Like I say, a lot of this stuff's on the back burner. I bring it forward when I get more information, but I still don't have the whole picture on a lot of it yet.
Right. Well, you know what's interesting about the Whitley Strieber thing, because a lot of people were triggered by that cover. A lot of people, like they recognize that image big time.
That I was thinking along those lines because I got experience with that. But when I went back to my mom's house and got the boneyard out and found the drawings that I did when I was 6 years old, there was no doubt in my mind that this wasn't something somebody had, well, it could have been because I was exposed to MK Monarch out there in Riverside.
Right.
Anaheim was just a short drive away where Disneyland was. Walt Disney was full blown into it. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, there was that, but like I said, I did draw those pictures when I was 6. So what happened and what I saw.
Right.
There's something to that. That much I know of those two experiences. Anything else could have been a dream, could have been a suggestion. There have been, but most of them have been innocuous, and they broke down after a while, and the real stuff would come forward, and there'd be stuff to corroborate that.
Exactly.
That's what I always look for.
Yeah, there's definitely a difference. And I'm wondering if your grandmother actually had a connection to ETs at all through their lineage.
Well, actually, yeah.
So that would explain it.
200 watchers coming down. You read the Book of Enoch, just the first couple chapters. Just remember, when they talk about angels or watchers, they're talking ETs, extraterrestrial, creatures, people not of this earth.
You bet. Off-worlders. Yeah, so that makes sense.
The first 200 wording families were ET families.
There you go, John. That's it right there. Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to have you on, and we'll have you back soon. Everybody have a great week, and thanks for tuning in.
Listening to Revolution.